A Texas man accused of murder cuts off his ankle monitor, flees across the Atlantic, and is now using a European constitution to fight his way out of a trial.
Yeah, it is a pretty staggering sequence of events.
Right. So let's get right into the facts. Lee Gilley is a software engineer from Texas. He was out of jail on a $1 million bond, facing charges for the alleged capital murder of his pregnant wife.
And, the trial is looming.
Exactly. But on May 1st, 2026, Gilley snips his GPS ankle monitor. He travels across the border into Canada, and he boards Air Canada Flight 894 straight to Milan, Italy.
He basically makes a run for it.
Yeah. Landing in Europe, he tries to slip past border control using a forged Belgian passport. He's using this completely fake name, Lejeune Jean Luc Olivier, but Italian border police intercept him immediately.
Which usually means game over, right?
You would think. You were probably thinking, this is where the handcuffs come out, local police celebrate, and he is thrown right on the next flight back to a Houston courtroom. But you would be wrong.
Very wrong.
Instead of facing a jury, Gilley is sitting in Turin asking for political asylum. He is exploiting a massive legal clash between the local Texas justice system and European human rights laws.
It's a wild situation.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into news reports from Houston and international outlets, a University of Oxford research paper on the death penalty, and the Federal Judicial Center's Guide for Judges. Our mission is to unpack exactly how a fugitive uses international borders as a legal shield.
What this means for, law and order on a global scale.
Right, because I want you, the listener, to imagine you are reading a thriller where the villain escapes, but instead of a shootout, the climax involves constitutional law and treaties. How do countries decide who they hand over? And when do they look at an American arrest warrant and simply say no?
It forces us to look at the very definition of sovereignty, honestly. Gilley's case highlights how a single plane ride completely resets the legal rulebook.
It really does.
We are dealing with two entirely different philosophies of punishment colliding in real time, and it feels like a mockery of local justice.
Before we get into that international legal standoff, we need to understand the crime that set this all in motion. On October 7th, 2024, in Houston, Christa Bauer Gilley is found unresponsive. And she was pregnant at the time.
Just a horrific, tragic situation.
Her husband, Lee Gilley, calls 911.
And that 911 call is where the investigation immediately pivots.
Right, because his story keeps changing.
Exactly. Investigators arrive and notice massive inconsistencies. First, he suggests she might have committed suicide.
Wow.
Yeah. Then he pivots and claims it was possibly a drug overdose. He also tells the responding officers that he attempted CPR to revive her.
But the medical evidence just shreds that narrative entirely. The autopsy proves Christa died from strangulation. The medical examiner's official report lists the cause of death as, quote, compression of the neck and upper back.
So clearly not a drug overdose.
Not at all. Based on that hard physical evidence, Houston police charge Gilley with capital murder. He goes to jail, but he posts a $1 million bond. The judge releases him with a GPS tracking monitor strapped to his ankle.
And his trial is set for May 2026.
Right. But weeks before that trial starts, he makes his move, he cuts the monitor, crosses the border into Canada, and takes that flight to Milan.
Okay, let's unpack this. We see this in movies all the time. But how does someone on a $1 million bond just cut a tracking bracelet and hop an international flight?
It requires, a staggering amount of premeditation. The prosecutors lay this out very clearly in the news reports. Gilley did not just panic one morning and start running.
He had a plan.
A very detailed plan. While he was out on bond, living in the community, he actively researched how to secure a new identity. He made inquiries about acquiring foreign identification documents.
Unbelievable.
And he devised a technical plan to remove the GPS monitor without immediately triggering a local police response that would trap him in Texas.
He essentially orchestrated a masterclass in dodging the law. He had to. He needed a solid strategy to get out of the United States and into Canada completely undetected. Then he utilized a totally different set of forged Belgian documents to cross the Atlantic. The level of calculation here is just immense.
He leaves a grieving family behind, cuts his tracker, and uses multiple fake passports. But the plan does hit a wall. The border police at Malpensa Airport spot the forged passport on May 3rd and detain him.
Right.
Again, as a listener, you might assume the story ends here. You catch the fugitive at the airport, you send him home to face the music.
That assumes he just wanted to hide in Italy. But Gilley did not pick Italy for the architecture or the food.
Right.
He picked it as a calculated legal fortress. He understood that the moment he stepped onto Italian soil, American jurisdiction just evaporated, and a totally different set of constitutional protections activated.
Which takes us straight into a Turin courtroom just a few days after his arrest. Gilley stands before an Italian judge and makes a highly strategic claim. He declares total innocence.
And he states he has absolutely no faith in the American justice system.
Oh, of course.
He argues his only real crime was fleeing. And he says he only ran because he was, quote, terrified for his life.
Terrified for his life.
Yeah.
That specific phrase is the linchpin of his entire defense strategy, isn't it?
Exactly. Because in that courtroom, Gilley formally files for political asylum. He tells the Italian authorities he requires international protection because he faces the death penalty in Texas.
And he brings the receipts to back that up. Texas actively uses the death penalty. If you look at the statistics he presents, Texas executed 5 people in 2025.
Right.
And by May of 2026, they had already executed 3 more. The state has a robust, well-documented history of enforcing capital punishment.
So he uses those hard numbers to completely reframe himself. He's no longer a murder suspect fleeing a trial. He is suddenly a refugee running from a state-sponsored execution.
It is an incredible manipulation of the system.
It really is. And the moment he officially submits that request for political asylum, the legal machinery grinds to a halt. He is removed from a standard prison environment.
Where do they put him?
Italian authorities place him into a CPR facility in Turin. That stands for Centro di Permanenza per i Rimpatri. It is strictly an administrative detention center.
So he is not in a high-security prison block with other accused murderers?
No, absolutely not, because he is an asylum seeker now. The CPR operates without standard prison restrictions. It is designed to hold individuals whose immigration status is just pending.
Right.
Because Gilley has no home, no job, and no support system in Italy, the state requires him to stay in the center. But he simply has to wait there until an Italian territorial commission reviews his asylum claim.
How long does a review like that actually take?
Right now, the Italian system is staggering under a massive backlog. The wait for an asylum court date in Italy currently takes more than 4 years.
4 years? Wow.
Yeah, the country receives an extraordinary number of irregular migrants every year. The system is just overwhelmed. Unless you are fleeing an active, highly documented war zone, your file basically goes to the bottom of a massive stack of paperwork.
So, is filing for asylum essentially a legal pause button that buys him 4 years of freedom from the Texas courts?
What's fascinating here is that the asylum claim is just the first line of defense. The asylum law acts as a literal wall.
Okay.
The second he files the paperwork, it creates an immediate formal obstacle against any extradition request from the United States. While the claim is pending, Italian law strictly prohibits sending him back. The government must process his claim first, regardless of the brutal charges waiting for him in Houston.
Imagine you are the lead prosecutor in Harris County. You find out your primary suspect in a domestic murder is essentially using the European migration crisis to buy himself 4 years of breathing room. It is infuriating. It feels like a massive loophole that just mocks the local justice system.
It definitely does.
But let's play this out. Let's say 4 years pass. The Italian Territorial Commission looks at his file, realizes he is an American software engineer fleeing a domestic murder charge, and they deny his asylum. Texas prosecutors think they finally get their guy.
Well, not quite.
Right, because they still have to scale a second, much taller wall, the Italian Constitution.
That brings us to the University of Oxford research paper on the death penalty. It provides the crucial historical context here. Article 27 of the Italian Constitution contains an absolute ban on the death penalty.
Okay.
The Italian courts interpret this as an inviolable protection of the right to life.
The Oxford paper dives really deep into the history behind Article 27. The Italian Constitution was drafted in the aftermath of World War II, following the fall of fascism.
Right.
The framers wanted to build an impenetrable legal wall against state-sponsored killing. They refused to leave any wiggle room.
And that historical trauma explains their absolute rigidity today. Under Italian law, sending anyone to a country where they might face capital punishment is strictly prohibited. It violates the core principles they established after the war.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In the past, when countries hit this kind of roadblock, they would just make a deal. The United States would look at a European country and say, look, we really want this fugitive back. We promise we will not seek the death penalty in this specific case.
Right. It's called a diplomatic assurance.
Exactly. It is basically a diplomatic IOU.
And for a long time, many European countries accepted those assurances. The European Court of Human Rights generally allows extraditions if the requesting country provides a firm promise not to execute the suspect. It is considered a valid compromise.
But Italy operates on a completely different standard. I would think a formal promise from the U.S. State Department or a Texas district attorney would be enough to clear the hurdle.
You would think so, but the Italian Constitutional Court ripped up that playbook decades ago.
Yeah.
The Oxford paper highlights a landmark 1996 decision known as the Venezia case.
Oh, right. Pietro Venezia.
Yes. He was an Italian citizen accused of murder in Florida who fled back to Italy. The United States provided formal diplomatic assurances, promising they would not seek the death penalty if Italy sent him back to face trial.
But the Italian Constitutional Court flat out refused to cash that IOU.
They rejected it entirely. The Constitutional Court ruled that Italy cannot legally accept diplomatic assurances from the United States. The judges stated that the fundamental right to life requires an absolute guarantee.
Absolute guarantee.
Yes, they ruled that it is inherently unconstitutional for Italian authorities to evaluate, negotiate, or trust foreign diplomatic promises on a case-by-case basis. They essentially declared that if the requesting state's laws allow the death penalty at all, Italy's not sending the person back.
But wait, Harris County prosecutors haven't even said they want the death penalty for Gilley yet. They haven't had a trial. Does Italy still block the extradition even if the death penalty isn't actively on the table?
This is perhaps the most aggressive part of the Italian legal doctrine. In 2024, the Italian Supreme Court strengthened their constitutional protections even further. They look specifically at procedural extradition requests.
Procedural meaning what exactly?
A procedural request means a suspect is being sent back to stand trial, not to serve a sentence that a judge has already handed down.
Which perfectly describes Gilley. He is awaiting trial.
Exactly. The Italian Supreme Court ruled that if a crime is punishable by death, in theory, the specific legal term is an abstracto, the extradition must be rejected outright.
Wow. So it completely ignores the actual intentions of the American prosecutors.
Completely. It does not matter if the possibility of an execution is highly remote. It does not matter if the local district attorney swears they will not pursue it. Because the Texas Penal Code states that capital murder can carry the death penalty, Italian law says the extradition must be denied, period.
The Italian courts are basically saying the mere existence of the Texas death penalty statute poisons the well. If the law is on the books in Texas, Italy refuses to engage. And the 2024 rulings went even further regarding how police treat the suspect while they wait, didn't they?
They established a radical precedent for prevented detention. The Italian Supreme Court ruled that because death penalty extradition requests are guaranteed to fail under their constitution, Italian police cannot legally hold the suspect in preventive detention on behalf of the requesting country.
Let me make sure I understand this. If the U.S. files a formal extradition request with an active arrest warrant for a murder suspect, the Italian police cannot even lock the guy up based on that specific request.
That is the exact legal reality. The Italian courts determined that you cannot deprive a person of their freedom to facilitate an extradition process that is fundamentally illegal under the Italian Constitution.
That is incredible.
If the end goal, extradition to a death penalty state, is unconstitutional, then holding them in a jail cell to achieve that goal is also unconstitutional. Gilley is currently in the CPR facility purely because of his pending asylum claim and his lack of a permanent address in Italy.
So he is not being held because of the American arrest warrant at all?
No, he is not.
So what does this all mean? Put yourself in the shoes of the victim's family in Houston. Does Gilley just win? Does he sit in an administrative detention center for 4 years, watch his asylum get denied, and then casually walk out into the streets of Europe as a free man?
It sounds like a catastrophic breakdown of justice, doesn't it?
It really does. It feels like criminals can just shop around for the most lenient laws.
It looks incredibly bleak for Texas prosecutors.
Yeah.
They are staring at an impenetrable constitutional wall. But international law does have a fail-safe mechanism designed for exactly this scenario. It is a legal principle known as aut deudere aut judicare.
Which roughly translates to extradite or prosecute?
Yes. The international community recognizes that you cannot allow sovereign constitutions to inadvertently create safe havens for violent criminals. If Italy refuses to hand Gilley over because their constitution forbids sending him to Texas, Italian law allows Italy to prosecute the suspect in their own courts.
But how on earth do you hold a murder trial in Turin, Italy, when the crime scene, the responding officers, the medical examiners, and all the physical evidence are 5,000 miles away in Houston, Texas? That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, It requires an unprecedented level of international cooperation. And this is where the Federal Judicial Center's Guide for Judges becomes highly relevant.
Right, because it outlines the whole process.
Exactly. Italy relies heavily on the original requesting country to essentially build the entire case for them. The Houston Police Department and the Texas prosecutors have to package up all their evidence, legally certify it for a foreign court, translate thousands of pages of documents into Italian, organize witness testimony.
Wait, they would potentially have to fly Houston witnesses all the way to Turin.
Yes, potentially. And they have to hand all of this over to Italian prosecutors.
Have they ever actually pulled this off? Has Italy ever successfully tried an American murder case using imported evidence?
They actually have. If we look back at Pietro Venezia, the man from the 1996 case who fled Florida, he didn't just walk free after Italy blocked his extradition.
Okay, that is somewhat reassuring.
He was ultimately tried, convicted, and imprisoned in Italy for the murder he committed in the United States. Italy used the physical evidence and witness statements provided by Florida law enforcement to secure a conviction and put him behind bars.
So Texas prosecutors might have to swallow their pride, accept the reality of European law overriding theirs, and settle for an Italian trial?
They might have to.
But there's a massive catch here. If Gilley is convicted in Italy, he faces Italian punishments. During his initial hearings, his Italian defense attorney confidently noted that even a sentence of life without parole does not comply with European human rights law.
Right, because the European system focuses heavily on rehabilitation. It is not just about permanent removal from society, like it often is here.
So even if Texas spends millions of dollars helping Italy convict him, he would never face the severe punishments that Texas law actually demands for capital murder.
And that is the ultimate trade-off Gilley calculated when he bought that ticket. His flight wasn't just a physical escape across the ocean. It was a transition from one legal reality into another.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
He deliberately stepped out of the realm of Texas capital murder statutes and into the realm of Italian constitutional human rights. He weaponized the differences between two sovereign justice systems.
It is incredible to think that a single border crossing can completely redefine the concept of justice. In Texas, justice for the murder of a pregnant woman involves the heaviest penalty the state can impose.
Right.
But in Italy, justice requires absolute protection of the suspect's right to life, regardless of the severity of the alleged crime.
This case exposes the deep, unavoidable friction between those two systems. You have local American law enforcement desperately trying to protect their community and hold a suspect accountable, crashing headfirst into a European legal wall built on the ashes of World War II and a completely different philosophy of human rights.
While we discuss the abstract legal theories and the treaties, we have to ground this in the human element. This story involves a grieving family in Houston. It involves a pregnant woman who lost her life.
Absolutely.
And it involves real-world legal chess moves. Cutting an ankle monitor, forging a passport, filing an asylum claim that dictate how and where justice is finally served.
It forces us to ask hard questions about how the world handles crime in a globalized era. Does a foreign court have the right to dictate how an American state handles its own criminal suspects?
That is the big question.
The Italian courts argue they're simply defending their own constitution. But for the victims back in Texas, it feels like a total denial of local justice.
You have local laws designed by Texans to protect Texans being completely neutralized by a constitution written an ocean away. It just doesn't sit right with a lot of people.
No, it doesn't.
As global travel becomes easier and borders continue to blur, will we eventually see a unified international standard for justice? Or will differing local laws, like the death penalty in Texas, continue to create legal sanctuaries on the other side of the world?
It is a sobering thought.
And more importantly, as remote work and global mobility increase, are we moving toward a future where well-funded defendants can effectively shop for the Constitution that best protects them from the crimes they committed back home? It is something to think about. That is all for today. Keep diving deep.